10 days ago, NBC News foreign correspondent Keir Simmons had an exclusive interview with the Russian lawyer at the heart of that now infamous meeting with Donald Trump Jr., Paul Manafort, and Jared Kushner, and others. And now, in another NBC News exclusive, Keir sat down with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and he joins us live now from Moscow. Keir?
Hey, Nicole, I think what's interesting here is for all the talk about whether the Russian government supported the Trump campaign, what you get from this interview with the Russian foreign minister is that actually they are still supportive of President Trump, even if you like from a distance. And you'll remember back at the G20, we know that there were 3 meetings between President Trump and President Putin. One of those meetings only revealed this week. Well, now Sergei Lavrov suggests that perhaps there were other meetings between the two leaders. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was in the room when President Trump met President Putin for 2 hours this month. The two leaders had also met briefly to shake hands and later spoke at an official dinner after President Putin was seated next to the First Lady. Now, asked if they interacted on other occasions at the G20, Mr. Lavrov is dismissive, but does not deny the possibility.
We know about President Putin and President Trump meeting 3 times at the G20. They met, obviously, for the bilateral. They met at the dinner, and they met...
Well, maybe they went to a toilet together. That was a 4th time.
They met also when they were photographed shaking hands. That's my question. I mean, did they meet other times in the hallways? Were there other occasions when they met?
When you are brought by your parents to a kindergarten, do you mix with the people who are waiting in the same room to start going to a classroom?
It's the G20 though, not a kindergarten.
Well, but there is also a room where they get together before an event starts. They cannot arrive all at the same time in a bus.
This is Sergei Lavrov's first US interview since that G20 meeting, and following his controversial visit to the Oval Office in May, where it was alleged President Trump shared sensitive US intelligence with Mr. Lavrov. But the intelligence about an alleged ISIS plot to turn smartphones and devices into bombs was not secret, Sergei Lavrov claimed.
He was accused of telling me a secret about something which was discovered by special services and which related to the ability of terrorists to manipulate with smartphones and notebooks the way which would allow the explosive to be placed in those devices. But this very statement was made publicly either by FBI or by CIA about a month before I entered the Oval Office.
He repeated Russian denials that it intervened in the US elections, describing President Trump as engaged in a fight with the American establishment.
So the fight goes on. They want to make the life of this administration miserable. People try to speak about impeachment.
It's a fight, though, you think? It's a fight for President Trump?
It's absolutely a fight. But as I said,
And Russia is on President Trump's side?
No, we are on the side of justice.
And in our interview, Sergei Lavrov describes the seizure of 2 Russian compounds in the US under the Obama administration as a straightforward robbery. Of course, the US says that those compounds were used for spying by the Russians. So while praising President Trump, Moscow has been threatening to expel US diplomats over that issue, Nicole.
Keir, it's extraordinary. Great exclusive work out of Moscow, and the first interview with the Russian lawyer, now the sit down with the Russian foreign minister. Thank you very, very much. We're going to try to get you to come back at 4. Richard Haass, what do you make? First of all, that Lavrov is making toilet jokes is just the last piece of evidence that the whole world has gone mad. I've watched him for a long time, and I've never heard him say something, well, they could have gone to the toilet together. But just the, you know, he's a pro's pro. He makes it no secret that they are playing Trump.
Right. Well, the contempt. No other word for it. The contempt with which he spoke during that interview. This is a seasoned diplomat. And when he chooses that kind of a tone and substance, it's not, shall we say, accidental. It was contempt. Now, what it is a bit of menace. What this is saying is if you don't do what we want in something like reopening, giving us access to these 2 compounds from which they engineered spying against us, there will be repercussions.
But what are we getting? I mean, they got the ceasefire in Syria. They got the ending of the CIA program. What are we getting?
The answer is we're not, and that's the mystery here. Why is it for 2 years, first as a candidate, now as president, has Donald Trump sustained a policy towards Russia? Generous word would be benign or sanguine. An ungenerous word would be, why are we letting them, essentially for free, dominate in Syria, dominate in Ukraine? Why are we letting them interfere in our political processes cost-free? Something doesn't add up here. I can't explain it. Like, my background is politics, foreign policy. I cannot explain it on a narrow geopolitical argument why we would have this attitudes towards Russia, given everything they're doing in the world, and given the fact, look, Russia's 1/10 the size of China. Why would we be giving so much attention, so much room to Russia, given all the important issues we face in the world?
The wrong question.
It's not a question of what we are getting as a country. The question is, what is Donald Trump getting, or what has Donald Trump gotten out of this arrangement? That is the question.
We don't know that, but let's bring in a member of both the Foreign Relations and the Judiciary Committees, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Senator, you were able to hear that interview Keir Simmons had with Sergei Lavrov, correct? Did you hear that?
Yes, I did, John.
Did you get the impression, well, let me ask you, is it wrong to get the impression, listening to Lavrov and thinking of Putin and Lavrov and Trump in the same room, that we're looking at a huge, huge mismatch here, and that we're paying a price for it?
Yes, I mean, I think it's important for us to remember that Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov are very experienced, very cagey players on the world stage. This is the fourth American president with which they've had the opportunity to work. And Vladimir Putin, a skilled former KGB agent, has all the tools at his disposal that Russia has used to play chess with us over decades. And my concern is that President Trump is playing checkers or isn't even on the same board.
So with regard, again, with the Russians, what are your thoughts on the combination of Russia and Tehran, now that we've supposedly just given up the ghost in Syria? Russia and Tehran dominating that area, that region of the world.
Well, that's got significant strategic consequences for us and our close allies. Michael Gerson wrote, I thought, a compelling column in the Post yesterday entitled Trump's Breathtaking Surrender to Russia that points out some of the consequences of the unilaterally walking away from the Syrian opposition that's been trained and equipped by the CIA over recent years. And the idea that we would make a number of concessions to Russia without getting anything in return, and how that weakness will affect our role in the Middle East, in Western Europe, and throughout the world. As Richard Haass just pointed out, we've got significant challenges around the world. We're not talking about North Korea. We're not talking about finding ways to move China towards reining in North Korea's nuclear program. We're instead talking about how we are on the retreat in the face of Russian assertion or aggressiveness, whether it's on the eastern edge of NATO or in the Middle East in Syria. And to your question, I think Iran is poised to take advantage of the opening that's being created here and to spread their brand of extremism even more broadly throughout the Middle East.
Senator, you also sit on the Judiciary Committee, and you've invited Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort to testify on Wednesday. I wonder, one, if you think they'll show up, and two, if you'll subpoena them if they do not.
Well, both the chair of the committee, Senator Grassley, and the ranking member, Senator Feinstein, have publicly said that they will use the Senate subpoena power if they don't come willingly. So I expect that we will see them next Wednesday. I think this is an important next step in better understanding what happened. I'll remind you that the meeting that they had, that Donald Trump Jr. had, and Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort, was supposedly about adoptions, something that President Trump just referenced as well. Oh, I talked about adoptions. The adoptions issue is really tied to the Magnitsky Act, which is a set of sanctions on Russian human rights abusers, folks who were involved in murdering Sergei Magnitsky back in 2009. This is something Senator Ben Cardin and Senator John McCain have really championed as part of our long history of standing up to Russian abuses of human rights.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.